Chapter 51 14 Layers of Key Condensation. Simultaneously, his body flickered onto the stone platform. He looked down at the Heng Yue Sect crowd with disdain. "All you inner disciples, come at me together. I, Zhu Peng, am enough." The Heng Yue Sect disciples erupted in an uproar, anger flooding their faces. Even the sect elders frowned. Unusually, not a single Xuandao Sect disciple spoke, their eyes showing only respect. Clearly, this man held no ordinary position in Xuandao Sect. Elder Wang coughed, announcing loudly, "Friend Huang Long, this Zhu Peng is Xuandao Sect's senior disciple. Let's decide everything with one match if anyone among you can last 10 breaths without losing. Heng Yue Sect wins." Zhang Guang's eyes flashed as he leapt onto the platform. Such an arrogant youth. "I'll test you." Zhu Peng laughed wildly. "You? Looking at 6th layer key condensation? Hiding 8th layer strength. Such meager cultivation isn't enough." As he spoke, his eyes flashed coldly. He casually swept his sleeve, releasing a pitch-black giant snake that grew as it soared, instantly becoming a massive python reaching to the heavens. The python's enormous head gazed coldly at the shocked Zhang Guang before suddenly inhaling, creating an unimaginably powerful suction force. This force was peculiar, targeting Zhang Guang alone. Zhang Guang had no chance to dodge. Before he could use any techniques, his body flew toward the python like a kite with cut strings. Zhu Peng sneered, his right hand flashing out to grab Zhang Guang's throat. "Go back and cultivate for a few more decades before seeking me out." With that, he flung Zhang Guang backward at extreme speed. The remaining purple-robed disciple immediately jumped forward to catch Zhang Guang, but the throwing force was great. Both slid far across the ground before finally stopping. Zhang Ping's face was bloodless, his eyes tightly shut as his body trembled continuously. A black hand prick marked his throat like a vice grip. The purple-robed disciple who caught him remained silent, horror on his face. True person Huang Long felt bitter their opponent's senior disciple was too powerful. He could see that Zhu Peng's displayed power had reached the 10th layer of key condensation, and he surely had a talisman hiding his true cultivation level. Looking at the surrounding inner disciples, Huang Long sighed inwardly. None could secure victory. Even their senior disciple currently training with the core formation elders was only at the 10th layer of key condensation, though Wang Long himself could fight. If he lost too, Heng Yue Sect would suffer total defeat. Enough. Heng Yue Sect has no hope this time. We should notify the 2 ancestors about old Yaoing's words quickly for their decision. If what they say is true. Sigh. We can't keep Mount Heng Yue. Huang Long smiled bitterly. Zhu Peng swept his arrogant gaze across the crowd, whose net. All the Heng Yue Sect disciples stood frozen, speechless. They lowered their heads to avoid Zhu Peng's gaze, none willing to step forward. Zhu Peng sneered, internally despising them. Suddenly, he froze. One disciple at the 3rd layer of key condensation actually dared to meet his gaze. Wang Lin watched Zhu Peng with a calm expression. Zhu Peng stared at Wang Lin. "What? You want to come up?" His words drew everyone's attention. When they realized he meant Wang Lin, their expressions turned strange. True person Huang Long sighed. Previously, he wouldn't have noticed Wang Lin with his mere 3rd layer cultivation. But compared to the other disciples now, though this child's cultivation was low, his courage was admirable. Seeing no response, Zhu Peng sneered. "Fine, since none dare to challenge. Xuandao Sect wins this exchange." He turned to look at Elder Oyan. Elder Yaoing's face showed pride as he let out a long whistle. A black cloud shot out from Mount Heng Yue, quickly arriving. Wang Lin looked closely. It was the 1,000-legged centipede. Elder Oyan jumped aboard without a word. The Xuandao Sect disciples followed one by one, with Zhu Peng last, leaping onto the centipede's head and casting one last contemptuous glance at the Heng Yue disciples. The centipede moved swiftly away. From a distance came Elder Yaoing's deep voice. "Heng Yue Sect friends, Every word I spoke was true. All your nascent soul ancestors have perished since Yondao sect has won. Our ancestor Pu Inenzi will arrive tomorrow. You'd better leave quickly." True Person Huang Long and the others frowned, their hearts clouded. After hastily dismissing the disciples, they headed to the inner mountain to report to the core formation ancestors. Having heard Elder Yaoing's parting words, all the Heng Yue Sect inner disciples felt uneasy. Sun Dazhu especially showed a bitter expression as he hurried back to the herb garden with hands clasped behind his back. Wang Lin stood alone, watching Zhuangdao Sect's departure direction. He sighed inwardly. Wang Hao still hadn't delivered the medicine, and now the centipede had flown away, leaving no chance to obtain its poison. He sighed and turned away from Sun Dazhu's courtyard, heading toward his old quarters near the storage room. Soon he arrived at these chambers he hadn't visited in years. These quarters belonged to every inner disciple as long as their name remained in the sect register. The room wouldn't be given to another. So even after these years, this place still belonged to Wang Lin. He sat cross-legged on the bed, pondering briefly before taking out the stone bead. Gritting his teeth, he sank into it once more. In the dream space, Sichunan's voice boomed as soon as Wang Lin appeared. "Why didn't you step up during the match? With your current cultivation, you could have killed that Zhuangdao Sect senior disciple with one palm strike." Wang Lin smiled bitterly, respectfully saying, "Senior? Junior is only at the third layer of key condensation. How could I possibly defeat him?" Sichunan snorted lightly. "What third layer key condensation? Didn't I tell you last time you've reached false peak foundation establishment, equivalent to your 14th layer of foundation building? You think my years of nascent soul lessons were wasted? Never mind anything else if you were still at third layer key condensation. How could you see through all the disciples' cultivation levels?" Wang Lin froze, his heart suddenly racing. After hesitating, he asked, "Has Junior really reached the 14th layer of key condensation?" Sichuan replied irritably, "Yes. Would this old man lie to you? Because you cultivated in this space. Your cultivation doesn't match reality. Just give it some time, it will naturally adjust and reveal itself." Wang Lin drew a deep breath, about to speak when Sichuan suddenly said quickly, "Your master's coming to find you. Get out." Wang Lin's vision blurred, and when he reappeared in his room, the door was immediately pushed open. Sun Dazhu's gaze flickered as he stared at Wang Lin for several moments before saying gravely, "Come with me." Chapters 52 to 61. With these words, he turned and left. Wang Lin hesitated briefly, but remembering Sichunan's words about reaching the 14th layer of key condensation, his heart steadied. He followed, curious to see what Sun Dazhu intended. Sun Dazhu led them straight to the herb garden. Once inside, he pointed to a cup of tea on the stone table and spoke slowly. "Disciple, drink this. It's spirit medicine I prepared for you. After drinking it, pack your belongings. We're leaving Heng Yue Sect." Wang Lin glanced at the teacup without speaking. Sun Dazhu frowned, picking up the cup himself to hand to Wang Lin. "This sect is no longer habitable. Kid, when Zhuangdao Sect's ancestor arrives, everyone will be running for their lives." Wang Lin didn't take the cup. His spiritual sense detected spiritual energy within, but he said, "Disciple isn't thirsty. I'll pass on the tea." A cold gleam flashed in Sun Dazhu's eyes. "Drink it. Don't force your master to use force." Wang Lin remained silent. His left hand took the cup while his right hand secretly formed seals within his sleeve. The gravity art surged forth, manifesting as a giant hand that swiftly descended from above to grab Sun Dazhu. Sun Dazhu's expression froze before he began struggling, but no amount of effort could break free. Gradually, horror crept into his eyes. What technique is this?" Without speaking, Wang Lin approached Sun Dazhu. His eyes flickered as he lightly struck Sun Dazhu's chest, causing him to instinctively open his mouth. Wang Lin's right hand poured the tea in. Sun Dazhu's face changed dramatically, taking on a fierce expression as he spoke harshly. Wang Lin, what are you doing? Would you kill your master and destroy your ancestral ties? If you kill me, Heng Yue Sect won't let you go. Let me tell you, the sect leader asked me to visit him shortly if I don't show up. He'll definitely send someone to summon me. Wang Lin remained silent. His spiritual sense detected the tea dissolving in Sun Daoju's body as silver thread-like objects began crawling through his blood vessels toward his brain. Sun Daoju clearly sensed something wrong, but before he could speak, it was too late. The thread-like objects had entered his brain. His fierce expression gradually relaxed until it became peaceful. Wang Lin stared at Sun Daoju. Immediately noticing something odd, his eyes had become obviously dull. After pondering briefly, Wang Lin said, "Master, I didn't intend to kill you or betray ancestral ties. You were the one who meant me harm first. If I had truly drunk that tea, I fear you would have taken my life." Sun Daoju's expression remained blank as he suddenly said, "The tea cannot be drunk." Wang Lin started, carefully studying Sun Daoju for a long while before suddenly asking, "Why can't it be drunk?" "The tea contains 3 quarts threadworm grass," Sun Daoju replied mechanically. Wang Lin's eyes flashed. "What does this 3 quarts threadworm grass do?" "It controls all behavior of the target for a short time. It's one of the necessary ingredients for creating puppets." A murderous glint flashed in Wang Lin's eyes, though his voice remained calm. "Why did you want me to drink it? Ever since discovering your spirit gourd, I've been suspicious. That's why I took you as a disciple. I originally planned to use the soul search technique on you after you reached the first layer of key condensate, but since I had given you the spirit dispersing grass before, I thought you couldn't possibly reach the first layer within 10 years, so I let it go. I never expected your cultivation to reach the 3rd layer now. With great calamity approaching the sect and my cultivation being too low, I wanted to see if you had any secrets before leaving, so I prepared this tea." Wang Lin took a deep breath before asking, "What is spirit dispersing grass? Have you told anyone else about me? And why didn't you use the 3 quarts threadworm grass on me before?" "Spirit dispersing grass is essential for dispersing cultivation. It dissipates internal spiritual energy. I haven't told anyone about you at first because I feared others would try to take the gourd from me, and later because the situation was too sudden. Revealing it wouldn't benefit me, so I chose to act alone. As for the 3 quarts threadworm grass, I didn't have any then. I obtained it last year when I left the mountain, trading some stolen sect texts with a fellow cultivator. He said it had 100% success rate below the Foundation establishment realm, and being colorless and tasteless, it's hard to detect. I had planned to use it on 3rd nephew to obtain some evolution pills." Wang Lin's anger blazed as he smiled coldly. "Weren't you afraid I'd discover it, to obtain your secret? I couldn't care about much else. I'm old if I don't advance soon. I'll never reach Foundation establishment in this life." A cold light flashed in Wang Lin's eyes as his voice turned icy. "You mentioned the sect leader summoned you, is that true?" "No." As soon as Sun Daoju finished speaking, Wang Lin's gaze flickered. He struck Sun Daoju's crown with his palm. Sun Daoju's body convulsed, blood flowing from his 7 apertures as he collapsed. Wang Lin stared at his master's corpse, feeling something indescribable in his heart. This was his first kill and it was his own master. After a long silence, Wang Lin collected Sun Daoju's corpse and walked dejectedly out of Heng Yue Sect. Finding a mountain ravine, he disposed of the body. He kept Sun Daoju's storage bag, which contained some valuable items. Back in his room, Wang Lin sat cross-legged on the bed. His spiritual sense swept out, leaving traces around the room that would warn him of any detection. Finished with these preparations, he took out the mysterious bead and fell into thought. 3 days ago, all the characters on its surface had disappeared, replaced by a faint leaf shape. According to Sichu Nan, this meant the water element was complete, and now it needed the wood element. He had repeatedly urged Wang Lin to leave Heng Yue Sect to seek wood attribute materials and quickly supplement the heaven-defying beads with element. Wang Lin now understood his cultivation level. He had reached the 14th layer of key condensation. Holding the bead, he entered the dream space, quickly storing the bead in his storage bag just before entering completely. In the dream space, as soon as Wang Lin appeared, Sichunen's voice rang out, "Not bad. You show some of my old style. Remember, Wang Lin, the cultivation world is a cruel place. The strong prey on the weak. If you maintain your previous simple mindset, you won't live long." Wang Lin remained silent for a long while before asking, "Senior, should I now prepare for foundation establishment?" But Junior knows nothing of the foundation establishment incantations. Sichunan snorted. "It's enough that I know them. However, foundation establishment marks true entry into the ranks of immortal cultivation. It's very difficult. You should find a quiet place for seclusion that will greatly increase your chances of success. Also, your spirit spring water and snow water are no longer suitable. The moment of foundation establishment requires massive spiritual energy. You need to prepare plenty of dew." Wang Lin nodded. "Collecting dew is simple enough, it just takes time." Chapter 62. The Crisis Arrives. Foundation Establishment Realm, also known as the Key Condensation Realm, essentially uses heaven and earth spiritual energy to transform the body. All this prepares for foundation building. You could actually attempt foundation building now, but I suggest reaching the 15th layer first. Your aptitude is poor to begin with. Though I've spent decades using Nasetsu lessons to reform you, such heaven-defying feats would be barely possible if I still had my physical body. Now I can only slightly improve your aptitude, not perfect it." Sichunan sighed. "Moreover, your attack methods are too limited. Besides the basic immortal technique of gravity art, you have nothing else. This won't do. Unfortunately, the techniques I know require foundation building cultivation to reach foundation building quickly. Then I'll teach you the Yellow Springs Aperture Scripture." Wang Lin started. "Yellow Springs Aperture Scripture? Indeed. Even in our 6th grade cultivation nations, this technique ranks among the supreme. Though cultivation requires finding extremely in locations or progress is too slow, the Koldian spiritual power it produces has limitless might. Most importantly, this technique has the highest success rate for core formation. It's decided then, after reaching foundation building, you'll cultivate the Yellow Springs Aperture Scripture," Sichuan said proudly. Wang Lin pondered briefly before nodding. "Also, Wang Lin, don't keep the heaven-defying bead in your storage bag. Best to keep it against your chest. That way, I can communicate with you any time, even without entering the dream space. And you can enter through me." Time passed slowly as Sichuan explained. 2 days later, in the dream space, Wang Lin awoke. He sat cross-legged on his bed, placed the mysterious bead against his skin, drank some spiritual liquid, and practiced breathing exercises. The night passed quietly. Early the next morning, Wang Lin opened his door and gazed at the sky, deep in thought. With great calamity approaching, Heng Yue Sect into many secrets on his person, perhaps this was an opportunity to leave. As he pondered, suddenly all of Mount Heng Yue shook like an earthquake. A voice like heaven's authority suddenly descended from the sky, transforming into rolling thunder. "I am Pu Enzi of Zhuangdao Sect, Heng Yue Sect Junior. Since you've lost, leave this place quickly." True person Huang Long's face changed in the great hall. Just then, over 10 figures shot out from Heng Yue Sect's inner mountains. 2 at the front stood out, one elderly man with crane white hair but a youthful face and bright eyes. Beside him was an elderly woman, her face wrinkled and expression gloomy as she silently stared at the sky. Behind these 2 followed 10 elders, all wearing bitter expressions. The crane-haired elder called out loudly, "Senior Pu and Anzi, please state your business at our Heng Yue Sect." A towering figure appeared in the sky, broad-faced with large ears and an imposing presence. He said gravely, "You know very well. If this were Heng Yue Sect's mountain protecting formation from 500 years ago, I might have concerns, but looking at it now in Ping, let me break it first, then we'll talk. Juniors." Speaking thus, he waved his hand, manifesting a pitch-black small mountain that grew with the wind, instantly becoming a massive heavenly peak. He formed hand seals while uttering several complex, obscure words. The giant mountain crashed down with a boom. A light screen appeared above Pine Peak and Mount Heng Yue like an inverted bowl, protecting Heng Yue Sect by blocking the mountain. As expected of a great sect from 500 years ago, this formless transformation grand formation has some merit, actually able to disperse all attacks. But let me see how many of my attacks this formation can withstand without innocent soul cultivator maintaining it. Puananzi sneered, pointing at the giant mountain while rapidly changing hand seals. The mountain immediately began spinning before crashing down again. The crane-haired elder and elderly woman's expressions changed dramatically as they rushed to the stone platform on Pine Peak. They sat cross-legged on two of the 8 jade stones, rapidly forming hand seals. The mountain crashed down again. The light screen emitted earth-shaking booms as 7-colored light flashed intensely, barely withstanding the attack. 6 Foundation establishment elders sat on the remaining jade stones, their faces worried and unsettled. Wang Lin, quickly gather all inner disciples here. Heng Yue Sect faces its greatest catastrophe in 500 years today. The elderly woman called sharply before hurriedly spitting Corky onto the jade stone, her hand seals moving even faster. Wang Long's body shook. Without a word, he rushed across the stone bridge toward Mount Heng Yue. Mpiach, able to withstand to attack this third one break. In the sky, Huan-Anzi coldly snorted, spitting out a stream of nascent soul qi. The mountain trembled, rapidly expanding tenfold until it nearly blocked out the sky and sun before crashing down violently. With a tremendous boom, one of the 8 jade stones exploded. The Foundation establishment elders sitting upon it bled from 7 apertures before collapsing. Chapter 63 Domination. Break, break, break. Ku-Enenzi's face contorted as his hands swept wildly, causing the giant mountain to crash down repeatedly. The thunderous booms echoed across the horizon. The common folk in surrounding villages, towns, and counties had terrified in their homes. The braver ones peeked through windows to see an enormous mountain floating in the sky, continuously smashing downward. Another jade stone shattered, and another Foundation establishment elder collapsed, spitting blood. Huan-Enzi tossed out a purple-red gourd while muttering incantations. His hands crossed and changed formation, causing the gourd to tremble and release a stream of dark red liquid. The liquid immediately flickered with flame-like properties, enveloping the mountain. Break! Huan-Enzi barked. The flame-wrapped mountain crashed down with a boom, creating web-like cracks across the light screen that rapidly spread outward. 2 more jade stones shattered in succession as 2 more elders fell. Of the 8 jade stones, only 4 remained. Besides the 2 core formation ancestors, the remaining 2 Foundation establishment elders looked ashen, dripping with sweat as their bodies trembled uncontrollably, clearly at their limit. By now, Wang Lin had brought all the inner disciples. They watched with shocked expressions, trembling in fear. Wang Lin stood among them, staring at Pu-Enenzi in the sky. His heart struck with terror. Wang Hao was also present, though pale and extremely weak. Seeing Wang Lin, he sighed softly and moved closer to him. In the sky, Pu-Enenzi's expression darkened. The formless transformation formation's tenacity had exceeded his expectations. He knew well that this formation's current display wasn't its full potential with a nascent soul cultivator maintaining it. It could demonstrate its maximum power. Not to mention, the formation could now only defend, not attack. With a nascent soul cultivator present, it could surely unleash terrifying offensive capabilities. The crane-haired elder, watching one foundation establishment junior after another fall, felt his heart bleeding. He called out loudly, "Senior Pu'en-Anzi, Xuandao sect and Heng Yue sect have always been friendly. Do you truly intend to annihilate us?" Pu'en-Anzi snorted, speaking coldly. "Liu Wen-Ju, it's been 500 years. You, who were once a mere junior, have become Heng Yue sect spiller, reaching core formation. As a descendant of old acquaintances, it would be a shame to destroy this mountain protecting formation. If you open it voluntarily, everything can still be discussed." Core formation expert Liu Wen-Ju's face showed hesitation, but the elderly woman beside him shouted angrily, "Senior Pu'en-Anzi, we cannot comply." Pu'en-Anzi laughed wildly, his expression sinking as he commanded, "Fine then, break for me. Mountain protecting formation." His right hand waved, slowly raising the giant mountain. He took a deep breath, his face reddening as he spat out a great mouthful of nascent soul qi, causing the mountain to expand several more times. Fo! Pu'en-Anzi's hand seals changed as he pointed at the mountain, slowly pressing downward. The mountain hummed, descending 1 inch. The mountain protecting formation cracked, its web-like fissures multiplying as another jade stone shattered and another foundation establishment elder fell. The mountain pressed down another inch, and the last foundation establishment elder also collapsed, spitting blood. His spirit withered. "Break!" Pu'en-Anzi shouted. The mountain pressed down 3 inches. Hind Peak shook, rocks stumbling amid thunderous noise as dust filled the air. The massive mountain peak had been forcibly pressed down several hundred jang. The stone bridge connecting to Mount Heng Yue broke in the middle, falling into the ravine. Simultaneously, Heng Yue Sect's formless transformation formation finally gave way, shattering like glass. The entire light screen instantly broke apart and dissipated. The last 2 jade stones exploded. Liu Wen-Ju and the elderly woman fell to the ground, expressions bitter and speechless. Pu'en-Anzi snorted coldly, floating down from the sky while the giant mountain remained suspended, emanating waves of pressure. Upon landing, his expression ice cold, he addressed Liu Wen-Ju and the core formation elderly woman. "Your Heng Yue Sect's nascent soul ancestors have all perished in the Outer Realm Star War. You cannot protect this sect, rather than let others seize it. Better to give it to my Xuandao sect." Liu Wen-Ju exchanged a bitter glance with the elderly woman before saying softly, "Senior, please, considering the past friendship between our sects, don't." Before Liu Wen-Ju could finish, Pu'en-Anzi interrupted impatiently, "Leave, take nothing, keep talking, and I won't mind exterminating your entire Heng Yue sect." The elderly woman's face filled with anger, but before she could speak, Liu Wen-Ju quickly restrained her. Taking a deep breath, he said respectfully, "Junior obeys. However, Mount Heng Yue has been our sect's home for 1,000 years. Junior has no authority to give it to Senior, only to lend it. If someday," Pu'en-Anzi sneered, interrupting again, "lend? Fine. Lend it to Xuandao sect for 10,000 years." The inner disciples could only silently express their anger, their faces showing grief. Some disciples' eyes flickered as they began considering their own futures. Pu'en-Anzi's gaze swept, landing on Huang Long. "You leave the purple peak flying sword. My nephew Ouyang fancies it." Huang Long clenched his fists in humiliation, looking at the elderly woman and Liu Wen-Ju. Seeing them remain silent, he could only sigh helplessly as he took out the purple peak flying sword and threw it aside. Pu'en-Anzi's right hand grabbed, drawing the sword to his grasp. Immediately, purple qi streamed from the sword, condensing into the form of the massive purple dragon. Chapters 64-70. The massive dragon roared at Pu'en-Anzi, turning to strike back. Pu'en-Anzi sneered, flicking his finger against the sword. "Beast, return." The dragon's body trembled before reluctantly retreating into the purple peak flying sword, leaving the weapon dim and lusterless. Liu Wen-Ju and the elderly woman exchanged glances. both sighing. The woman's expression darkened as she said, "So be it. All Heng Yue Sect disciples, follow my command and let us depart." She cast a lingering look around before sighing again and floating upward. Pu Ananzai narrowed his eyes and suddenly announced, "My Xuandao sect is recruiting disciples. Any who wish to join may remain." The 10 Foundation establishment elders exchanged awkward glances. Only two rose to stand beside the elderly woman. The other 8 looked at each other, hesitating to follow. Liu Wenjie started, his expression changing, though he wanted to speak. No words came. He could only sigh silently and shake his head as he rose to join the elderly woman. Each follows their own path. We won't force those unwilling to follow, the elderly woman said gravely, suppressing her anger. Among Wang Long's generation of elders, after much hesitation, only Wang Long, Daozu, Tao, and the red-faced elder rose to stand behind the two-core formation ancestors. Of several dozen inner disciples, only about 10 rose up. Most remained in place. Wang Zhuo hesitated for a long time, unable to meet Daozu's eyes. His foot lifted and lowered several times before finally deciding not to follow. The Zhu girl hesitated briefly before also staying. As for the Zhu girl, seeing Wang Zhuo remain, she fell silent and lowered her half-raised foot. Wang Hao smiled bitterly at Wang Lin. "Brother Taizhu, I'm not going anywhere. I'll return home to be with my father. Don't worry about your family, I'll look after them." Only then did Wang Lin notice Wang Hao. Just as he was about to speak, he let out a soft exclamation, grabbing Wang Hao's arm to examine him. "Wang Hao, what happened to your cultivation?" Wang Hao smiled bitterly, shaking his head. "Brother Taizhu, don't ask. It's a long story." Wang Lin gave Wang Hao a look but pressed no further. After some hesitation, considering the many secrets he carried and the unknown dangers awaiting at Xuandao sect, he made his decision. Liu Wenjie and the elderly woman waited a while longer, seeing the Heng Yue disciples on the ground lowering their heads with no intention of following. They sighed. "So be it. Let's go," the woman said. She flew away first, followed by the remaining dozen or so people, their expressions bitter. The Heng Yue sect members, led by their core formation ancestors, departed like stray dogs, silently transforming into streaks of rainbow light vanishing into the distance. The Heng Yue disciples split 3 ways, one group following Liu Wenjie and the others, another choosing to stay, and the last leaving the sect to go their own way. Wang Zhuo chose to stay, becoming a Xuandao sect disciple. Wang Hao didn't travel with Wang Lin but silently descended the mountain, a trace of twilight clinging heavily to him. Though Wang Lin didn't know what had happened to him, it clearly related to his cultivation technique. Since Wang Hao chose not to explain, Wang Lin respected his decision. Perhaps being immortal would suit Wang Hao better. Given Wang Lin's humble status in Heng Yue Sect, no one stopped him from leaving the mountain. Even Pu and Anzi merely glanced at him before losing interest. After descending the mountain, Wang Lin didn't linger. He moved swiftly, experimenting with using the gravity art to float, rising into the air and transforming into a streak of rainbow light that vanished into the horizon. Flying through the sky, thoughts of his parents gradually rose in his heart. Soon he spotted his hometown in the distance. The mountain village remained largely unchanged, except his family's small tiled house had become a 3-sided courtyard with a large fortune character pasted on the front door. Though dawn was just breaking, he could hear dogs barking and roosters crowing in the distance. In the early morning village, cooking smoke drifted as households rose early to prepare breakfast. Wang Lin stood at the village entrance, gazing at his family's courtyard, his heart churning. 5 years had passed in a flash, yet memories of the past remained vivid, including his parents' hopeful gazes. He hesitated, feeling apprehensive about returning home, before taking a deep breath and slowly walking toward his door. Before entering, Wang Lin heard familiar voices from inside. "You little rascal, is this how you do carpentry? Look at what you've made." You're not even half as good as my son. Master, brother Taiju is an immortal cultivator, how could I compare? I'd be satisfied to be half as good as him." Wang Lin started upon hearing this. His spiritual sense swept out, and a smile crossed his face. He recognized the speaker as a childhood playmate who often begged Wang Lin's father to teach him carpentry. Gently pushing open the door and seeing the aged figure in the courtyard, Wang Lin said softly, "Father, Taiju has returned." The figure trembled, dropping his carpentry tools as he turned to stare at the youth of about 20, faintly seeing his child's innocent face from years ago. "Taiju?" Wang Lin's father rubbed his eyes hard, tears flowing unconsciously. Wang Lin stepped forward to embrace his father, wiping away his tears. Seeing the deep wrinkles that had appeared on his father's face, he stepped back and knelt, saying softly, "Father, your unfilial Taiju hasn't returned for 5 years. It really is Taiju. Wife, our child has returned." Taiju's father excitedly helped Wang Lin up, looking him over from every angle with a broad smile. "Taiju, you've grown taller, almost as tall as your father now, and stronger too. Very good, this is my son," his father said proudly. Just then, an aging woman walked out from the room, staring at Wang Lin as tears flowed. Wang Lin knelt before her, showing rare emotion as he said softly, "Mother, Taiju has come to see you." "You! How could you be so heartless? Not returning once in 5 years? Do you still have your parents in your heart? These 5 years, your father and I thought of you every day." As she spoke, Taiju's mother embraced him and began sobbing. Women's thinking. The boy is an immortal cultivator naturally. He has important matters to attend to. Look at yourself. What impression does this give others? Shall you? You go home now. No need to come for the next few days. I'll call you after your brother Taiju leaves," his father said, glaring at his wife before turning to his apprentice. Shall Yu beamed, repeatedly agreeing. He cast an envious look at Wang Lin before leaving. That day, Wang Lin's mother prepared a table full of his favorite dishes from childhood. The family of three caught up on the changes of the past 5 years. Though Wang Lin had long since transcended mortal food, he found his mother's cooking especially fragrant. During their conversation, his parents asked about the giant mountain that had appeared over Heng Yue Sect a month ago. Wang Lin hesitated before lying that the sect had moved and he couldn't return often. His parents didn't press further, only telling him to take care of himself. Much had changed in 5 years. Relatives visited frequently, and with fourth uncle's help, his father had reclaimed his rightful share of the family property, living quite prosperously. His father rarely carved wood now, having taken several apprentices to pass on his skills. Xiao Yu was the cleverest apprentice, having learned about 50 to 60% of the craft. Hearing this, Wang Lin smiled. "Father, I just saw Xiao Yu's wood carving. It's quite good. How can you say it's so poor?" His father snorted. "He's far from good enough. None of them compare to you. I started teaching you wood carving at 8, and even then you did better than them." Wang Lin's mother gazed lovingly at her son, adding, "That's right. Our Taiju has always been cleverer than them. Taiju, you are not young any more. These past few years, many families have sent matchmakers. I've heard immortal cultivators can marry too. Since you're back, don't leave yet. Come with mother to meet some girls. If there's a good match, we can arrange it." Wang Lin started, smiling wryly. "Mother, I'm not that old. Don't worry about this. You little rascal. Others your age in the village already have children running around." His mother immediately glared at him, dissatisfied. Wang Lin rubbed his nose. "Mother, marriage is a big matter. In a few years, I'll bring someone back for you. No need to rush. All right?" Seeing his wife about to speak again, Wang Lin's father coughed. "Wife, why do you worry needlessly? Our Taiju is an immortal cultivator. Understand? Would an immortal marry a mortal? Taiju means to find you an immortal daughter-in-law. Understand?" His mother's voice caught as she muttered, "What's so good about being immortal? Immortals don't even come home for 5 years. If I had an immortal daughter-in-law, they probably wouldn't visit for 10 years or more." Wang Lin smiled wryly, about to speak when his mother glared at him. "Fine. Listen to your father. You probably think you're too good for village girls now. Mother will wait to see what kind of girl you bring back." Seeing his mother angry, Wang Lin quickly smiled. "Mother, don't worry. Your son will definitely bring you a good daughter-in-law." After dinner, his parents seemed to have endless things to discuss, asking him about everything until they finally went to bed late at night.